Hello everyone. Today let's study about the first chapter, reproduction in organisms. Let us look into the first part, that is the asexual mode of reproduction. So, what is lifespan? We know that each and every organisms can live for only certain period of time. So, the period from the birth to the natural death of an organism represents its lifespan. So, the time period from birth to the death of an organism represents its lifespan. I have taken all the paragraphs from the NCERT so that you will not miss onto some parts of NCERT. So, we know that the lifespans of organisms are not correlated with their sizes. That means there is no relationship between the lifespan and the size of an organisms. For example, the size of the crows and parrots are not very different, means they are of same size, but still their lifespans show a wide difference. And similarly, even a mango tree has much shorter lifespan as compared to the peepal tree. So by this example we can conclude that there is no relationship between the size of an organism and lifespan of an organisms. Next, see, whatever may be the lifespan, but death of every individual is certainty. That means whether the lifespan is short or the lifespan may be very long, but still every organism has to die one or the other day. That no individual is immortal, that no individual can live forever except single celled organisms. So now why do we consider that there is no natural death in case of single celled organisms? Given this reality, have you ever wondered how number of plants and animal species have existed on the earth for several thousands of years? So there must be some processes in the living organisms that ensure the continuity. So there is some process which enables the organisms to continue its life process. Yes. So what is that process which helps the organisms to survive? Is that it is reproduction, something that we take for granted. So why do we say that single celled organisms are immortal or they live forever? Is that a single celled organisms like amoeba will divide further and it will give rise to two organisms. So we can say that there is no natural death, or we can consider it as immortal organisms. Now let's see the definition of reproduction. So reproduction is defined as the biological process. So reproduction is a biological process in which organisms give rise to young ones similar to itself. So whenever the organisms reproduces, it gives rise to young ones similar to itself, not similar to other kind of or other species of organisms. It will give rise to young ones similar to itself. These offspring, they grow, mature and in turn produce new offspring. Thus the cycle of birth, growth and death will enable an organism to continue its generation. So reproduction enables the continuity of species, generation after generation. Now let's see. There is a large diversity in the biological world and each organism has evolved its own mechanism to multiply and produce offspring. So there are different types of methods by which the organism reproduces. The organism's habitat, its internal physiology and several other factors are collectively responsible for how it reproduces. So many factors are responsible for the kind of reproduction the organism undergoes, based on whether there is a participation of one organism or two. The process of reproduction is of two types mainly. One is the asexual reproduction and second one is the sexual reproduction. So whenever a single parent is involved with or without the involvement of gamete, then such type of reproduction is called as asexual reproduction. But whenever two parents of opposite sex are involved and there is the involvement of fusion of male and female gametes, then such type of reproduction is called as sexual reproduction. So reproduction may be classified into two main categories, asexual and sexual. In asexual mode of reproduction, a single parent is involved, and here the gamete may or may not be involved. But whereas in sexual reproduction, two parents are involved, where two gametes are involved, one from the male parent and one from the female parent, and there is the fusion of gametes, syngamy occurs. So here this symbol represents female and this represents male. Now let's see asexual reproduction. So what is this asexual reproduction? A single individual or a single parent is capable of producing offspring. So as a result, the offsprings which are produced are not only identical to one another, they are identical to one another and also exact copies of their parent. And here the offspring are genetically identical to their parent, because a single individual reproduces, it produces organisms of its own kind, or it has the genetically identical offsprings. The term clone is used to describe such morphology and genetically similar individuals. So in asexual reproduction, the single parent give rise to offsprings, and these offsprings are identical to each other and also is identical to the parent. And here the offspring may be given the term clone. Asexual reproduction is common among single-celled individuals and in plants, animals with simple organizations. So asexual reproduction is seen in single-celled organisms, and if it is found or seen in plants and animals, it is relatively seen in the simple organisms like protistans and monerans. So here in protistans and monerans, the organisms or the parent cells divides by mitosis and gives rise to two new individuals. Thus, in these two organisms, the cell division. So one mode in asexual reproduction, what we can conclude is cell division. So here the cell division itself is a mode of reproduction. Many single-celled organisms reproduce by binary fission, where one cell divides into two halves and each two halves grow into an adult. Here the example for binary fission is amoeba and paramecium. So I have marked this in yellow. I have highlighted in this this binary fission in yellow color so that you can relate it. Next, in yeast, the division is unequal and the small buds are produced and that remain attached initially to the parent cell, which eventually gets separated and mature into new yeast organisms or cells. Here in yeast, what you can see is the division which is unequal, which gives rise to small buds. There is bud formation in yeast. These buds are initially attached to the parent and then they separate and they form a new organisms. Then next in amoeba. Amoeba, what you can see? Amoeba, you can see two types of reproduction. See, under unfavorable condition, when the conditions are not right, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia and secretes thick, thin, three-layered hard covering or cyst around itself. Three-layered hard covering, okay? This three-layered hard covering, which is called as a cyst around itself. This phenomenon is called as encystation. So during unfavorable condition, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia, secretes three-layered hard covering cyst around itself, and this process is called as encystation. And when the favorable conditions appear, like you can take when the food is abundant in the environment, the encysted amoeba divides by multiple fission inside this cyst. Inside the cyst itself, the amoeba starts dividing by multiple fission, means many number of division, and produces many minute amoeba or pseudopodiospores inside the cyst itself, okay? And the cyst wall bursts and the spores are liberated in the surrounding medium to grow into many amoebae. This phenomenon is called as sporulation. So amoeba undergoes asexual reproduction by method of sporulation. In unfavorable condition, it withdraws pseudopodia, secretes three-layered cell hard covering, which is called as cyst, and when the favorable condition return, inside the cyst, the amoeba divide by multiple fission and they give rise to minute small pseudopodiospores, and the cyst wall burst and these pseudopodiospores are released into the surrounding medium, and each pseudopodiospore give rise to a new amoeba. This phenomenon is called as sporulation. See, you can see here amoeba dividing by binary fission. Here this is the budding, this is the zoospores of Chlamydomonas. So Chlamydomonas divides by giving rise to spores. Here this is the conidia in the penicillium fungi, and here this is budding in hydra, and here there is a gemule formation in sponges. See, the kingdom of fungi and simple plants such as algae reproduce through special asexual reproductive structures. The most common reproductive structures are the zoospores, as I've already shown. Zoospores that are microscopic motile structures. See, these are motile, means they can move. Other asexual reproductive structures are conidia in penicillium, that is fungi, buds like in hydra. Hydra is a invertebrate, and gemmules in sponges. Even sponge is a invertebrate. You have learnt about the vegetative reproduction in plants in class 11th. So what do you think? Is vegetative reproduction also a type of asexual reproduction? How can you say that? See, in animals we can say asexual reproduction as a asexual mode of reproduction, but in plants we use the term as vegetative propagation or vegetative reproduction. See, while in animals and other simple organisms the term asexual reproduction is used, in plants the term vegetative reproduction is frequently used. In the plants, the unit of vegetative propagation such as runner, rhizome, suckers, tubers, offset and bulb all are capable of giving rise to new offspring. These are called as vegetative propagules. So in plants we know that there are many kinds of meristem, and every cell in the plant is totipotent, that is, it has the ability to give rise to a whole new individual. And so in plants there is vegetative propagation, that is asexual mode of reproduction, and here runners, rhizomes, suckers, tubers, offset and bulb are involved in asexual mode of reproduction. See, here there is eyes of potato, they germinate and give rise to a new plant. Even in the ginger there are adventitious roots and also rhizomes which give rise to new individual. And here there is bulbil of agave and leaf buds in the bryophyllum, and even here in the water hyacinth you can see the offspit, this part. These are all vegetative parts which give rise to a new offsprings and involved in asexual mode of reproduction. So obviously, since the formation of these structures do not involve two parents, so what all examples you have seen in the diagrams, here there is no involvement of two parents because only one parent is involved, and thus all the processes is considered to be asexual. So in some organisms, if the body breaks into distinct pieces like fragments, and each fragment grow into adult type capable of producing offsprings, example hydra, this is also a mode of asexual reproduction called fragmentation. So what we can say? Fragmentation is also mode of asexual reproduction. Then you must have also heard about the scourge of the water bodies and about the terror of Bengal. Have you all heard about the terror of Bengal? It is called as the water hyacinth, which you have seen, which is an example for offset in plants, which is one of the most invasive weeds found growing wherever there is a standing water. So wherever there is standing water, this water hyacinth spreads rapidly. It drains all the oxygen from the water and leads to the death of other fishes. You may also find it interesting to know that this plant was introduced in India because of the beautiful flowers and shape of the leaves. Since it can propagate vegetatively at a phenomenal rate and spread all over the water body in a short period of time, it is very difficult to get rid of them. So when it was introduced to India, because it had beautiful flowers, it was introduced, and these plants rapidly multiply by asexual reproduction, and they spread very fast. They take all the oxygens from the water, and which leads to the death of fishes. So it is called as the terror of Bengal, because first it was introduced in the Bengal area and later it led to the death of many fishes, and now it is really very difficult to get rid of these plants. So it is a very important example, keep it in mind. Are you aware how the plants like potato, sugarcane and banana, ginger, dahiya are cultivated? Have you seen small plants emerging from the buds called the eyes of the potato tuber from the rhizomes of banana and ginger? Yeah, we have already seen the examples of these plants. So when you carefully try to determine the sites of origin of the new plantlets in the plants listed above, you will notice that there are invariably arise from the nodes present in the modified stems of these plants. So from where they arise from the nodes. When the nodes come in contact with the damp soil or water, they produce roots and new plants. Similarly, adventitious buds arise from the notches present in the margins of leaves of bryophyllum. This ability is fully exploited by gardeners and farmers for commercial propagation of such plants. So we know, so if this is a plant, from here this is called a node area. From node area, when this node area comes in contact with damp soil, roots arise and this gives rise to a new plant. So this property is exploited by the gardeners. The gardeners take off this part and they cultivate new plants. So it is used for the commercial propagation of such plants. It is interesting to note that asexual reproduction is common method of reproduction in organisms that have relatively simple organization like algae and fungi, and then they have to shift to the sexual mode of reproduction just before the onset of adverse condition. So whenever there is a favorable condition, these small organisms like algae and fungi undergo asexual reproduction. But what is said that if at all there is an unfavorable condition, then these small organisms have to shift to asexual mode of reproduction. Why? We'll see it later, okay, in the second part. You have to note that both asexual as well as sexual mode of reproduction are exhibited by the higher plants. So in higher plants, there is both asexual as well as sexual mode of reproduction. But on the other hand, only sexual mode of reproduction is present in most of the animals. So most of the animals means that in some animals even asexual mode of reproduction may takes place. So this is all about asexual reproduction. Thank you.